Hello? Just a minute, it's for you.
Oh, it's Jack Renfro. How are you? Yeah, Jack grew up next door to me. Which reminds me, Dee, thank you, Jack, for calling. Their dog's name was Snowball.
I'll have him call you later. Is he still alive?
Snowball's dead.
Oh.
And then next to Snowball was Vic Moore, another dog in our neighborhood. And then Jomo McCulley and King Kerr was another dog in our neighborhood growing up. These are dogs. We talked about the dogs on 21st Street from 1960 to 1970. And then Sean Abel, Frank Abel's dog, and Tramp and Cracker were my dogs. And Baron McGee, the damn meanest dog in the neighborhood. I once showed my bravery to the neighbors by slipping up and rubbing tar on Baron while he's sleeping to show how brave I was. And then B.G. Gibson, you know Jim Gibson, the Pastor Gibson? Jim Gibson had the meanest dog too. B.G. was so mean that one time me and Scott Taylor were sitting in the driveway. B.G. came up and hiked his leg up on me, and I didn't move. I'd rather be peed on than bit. And then Jane Epperson, he bit me one time, and Scott Taylor's dog was Smokey, and Blackie Lawman, and Peppy Ty. My dog Tramp bit one of Peppy Ty's testicles off, and Dad had to pay for a testicle. And then Jim and I, 5 was Jim Park's dog. Let's just get started on some boring subjects.
That's a lot more dogs than most people will have.
Well,
Or those are neighborhood dogs.
That's just our neighborhood dogs.
Which one was yours?
Tramp and Cracker.
Everybody had a dog named Tramp.
Well,
after that movie.
After the movie, the
Lady and the Tramp.
Lady and the Tramp had come out, and I had Tramp. Tramp was a wonderful dog, and went everywhere with me. Actually, I hit Tramp. I ran over Tramp myself by accident.
Killed him?
No, we had to take him to Auburn University, and we drove him down there in the car and took him and put him in a body cast, and then we flew back and picked him up in an airplane. Dad chartered a little bitty airplane at the airport, and we flew down there. And he had lost a lot of movement, but he was still a great dog. So he's buried there at 480 21st Street where I grew up. I got a little tombstone for him.
Who lives in that house now?
My sister Ann.
She takes care of the site?
Yes. Yeah, she's in charge of the grave.
If they had DNA, I had this guy that worked for me, his dog died, and he took its DNA so he could have it cloned.
Well, I'd like to have that for Tramp. Janie's talking about that for Hazel. We've got a dog now, a Coton du Tulare. This dog doesn't even speak English. You got to talk French to this dog. But that dog is very close to us and sleeps right in the bed with us. And I mean, just right in the bed, right next to on your pillow with you. So she's talking about getting her cloned.
Yeah. What about did you have when you went to college? Did you have any pets there?
Yeah, I had Tramp.
Oh, you
when
took
I went
him
to
with
college.
you?
No, I didn't take him with me. I had Tramp and I had Crichter the boa constrictor. My room looked like, I mean, our housekeeper, our maid would not go in our room because too many things crawled in there. It looked like a cross between a museum and a science project. I mean, I was growing paramecium. I had an owl that lived in my room by its, a screech owl that actually lived in the room there, just flew around loose.
It never went out?
Couldn't go out. I kept the door shut.
How'd you get him in there?
Well, I was at the Apison horse sale. I was about 14.
I've been there. I was there. They don't have that anymore.
No, they don't. And I was a bird expert, etymology expert. By the time I got to high school, I knew all about every animal there was. Anyway, I was about 14, and we were watching the auction, and right in the top of that barn, this screech owl flew in. And I noticed right below that screech owl was a big pile of hay. So I decided while the auction was going on, that screech owl was watching everything going on. His head was going back and forth, those horses coming in. I slipped up the rafters and climbed up the rafters, and I got above it. And I was sitting there. I had an idea. I was going to leap off the rafters, grab that owl on the way down, and hit in the hay, and nobody even see me. Well, about the time I got ready to go, the auction stopped. The auctioneer pointed at me, and everybody stopped, and the whole auction stopped. and everybody looked up to watch me. Now I've got the pressure on me, and I leaped out of the rafters, grabbed that owl on the way down, and hid in the hay, and everybody applauded. And so then I brought it home. Of course, Mother didn't know I had a live owl in my room for a while. I'll tell you something about an owl I didn't realize, and I learned by experimenting with them. There's absolutely no sound. When they fly at night, an owl could fly right through here and you wouldn't hear a single sound. There's no flutter, absolutely no flutter at all.
How they get away with that?
I don't know. It's the way their feathers work. But they can slip up, they hunt at night, and the thing about it is the owl would sleep all day long and be up all night, and I slept all day, all night, and was up all day, so we had different hours.
Yeah. So it didn't bother, y'all didn't
Yeah,
bother
it did.
each
It
other.
fly around at night.
Where would it sleep?
Like
in a closet or something?
I had some bullhorns. It roosted on the bullhorns, or I had a gun rack above my head. It either roost on the gun rack or it roost on the bullhorn.
That is really odd.
That's just the start of it. I mean, I had 1 year. I brought home a black widow because I was an etymology expert, and I convinced my parents I was really smart and that I knew what I was doing with it. And I had it in a gallon jug in my room, a black widow, and I was probably about 6th, 7th grade then. And I came in one day after school. I noticed it had made a cocoon that had been there about a month or so. And I came in after school one day, and it looked like somebody had put black pepper all over that cocoon. I didn't know what that was, and I peeped in there, and then I realized those were baby black widows.
God.
And then I looked at the holes in the top of that jar, and I looked at the size of those little black widows, and I had to go down and give my parents some really bad news. So the Jones family took an impromptu vacation to Florida in the middle of a school week. There was we just had to get out of town to get our house fumigated. So.
Will exterminator kill black widows?
Yeah, they had to tent the house or something.
So it was a special.
It was a special deal. They had to fumigate the house. They didn't just come in and spray. They fumigated.
Even the one you brought home? Or did you say, well, you couldn't
that,
save it?
Yeah, that wasn't allowed to. They had to. That was the end of that one. They all went. It was just one of the things.
You thought you'd have gone into veterinarian or?
Well, I considered a biology teacher. I had a squirrel that lived in my room too, Jack the squirrel. You remember Paul Bacon, Dr. Bacon?
The dentist?
The dentist.
Yeah.
He came over to spend the night with me one time. We were little. We were probably 4th grade, and I kept my window cracked about that much. And I had a bird cage in there, and inside the bird cage I had a Mayfield milk carton, and inside the milk carton I had toilet paper. And people don't realize the squirrels they stay out till after dark. And so it was probably about 10 or 15 minutes after dark. We're in the room, all of a sudden that squirrel came through the window, leaped up to its cage, crawled in and went to bed, and Paul Bacon about died. He had no idea I had a live squirrel in my room living with me. So that's just one of many. And then Crichter, the boa constrictor, when I went away to college, my parents, I got a Dear John letter where my parents had given Crichter away. Gave it to the biology department at Bradley High School, by the way.
Who was that teacher? Wasn't that Mr.
I was too angry to ask. I was mad. He gave my snake away. What had happened is Dad said, look, when I called, he said, look, we did just what you told us to do. We went to Kresge's and bought a guinea pig. And we put the guinea pig in the cage. And we told your sisters, we bought the guinea pig. My sisters were a lot younger. That we bought the guinea pig to keep Crichter company. And by this time, they had taken Crichter out of my room and into the basement. And unfortunately, Allan, after we thought everything, they were going to bed, they slipped back down to check on that guinea pig, and they found the guinea pig halfway down the throat of the snake, and it traumatized them. So we had to get rid of it. But I mean, our housekeeper, my mother used to take that snake, have to take it to my dad's office on the 2 days a week. Our housekeeper came because she wouldn't come in the house with that snake. And she didn't come in my room because she said too many things crawled in there. So
I don't remember Kresge selling animals.
Kresge's didn't sell it. How I got Crichter was Doug Guerin, one of the greatest Americans to ever live, and my best friend. And we were both...
Go ahead.
You got a phone. Why don't we answer your phone call to see who it is? Who do you think it is? Could be Jack Renfro.
I think it was Jack Renfro. Is he still alive?
He is. He's living in Knoxville somewhere.
Well, how was he, older than you or younger?
He's my age. He was my age.
And that's who you'd run around with?
Well, Jack lived next door. Doug Guerin was my kind of.
But if the phone, was he have these kind of phones?
Yes, that's a rotary phone, and that's before your time.
Well, no, we had these.
You had a rotary phone?
Yeah.
Well, we had a rotary phone that
What
hung
was
on
your
the wall.
phone number at your house?
4764217. The Renfro's number was 647-66443. Jim Parks was 68139. Scott Taylor 25506. I can keep going.
Well, mine was 472-7796.
27796.
And my cousin's was 476-7701.
Well, I had the first push-button telephone in Cleveland, 1974.
It was, you had to hold it and go, right?
No, it was electronic impulse dial.
Yeah.
What happened in 1974, AT&T lost a lawsuit before they provided South Central Bell, which was was part of AT&T. South Central Bell, you had to rent your phones from them. And I found out about this lawsuit, and I went down and found a new phone system we could buy for $7,000. Dad had a Fit at the credit bureau. I went to work for my dad at the credit bureau, and he had a Fit. And I found one phone he had. This is 1974. He'd been paying rent on that phone since 1946. And I showed him where we had to pay.
One phone?
One phone.
At the whole credit union?
No, we had more. That was his first phone. And then he added a second phone, a third phone. We had 12 phones.
That you were renting?
That we were renting. And so I went and bought a new phone. It was an electronic phone called a Patrician. And it was the first time South Central Bell had ever disconnected somebody's phone. And they were really hot when they came in and disconnected the credit bureau's phone. But one of the things we had is we had electronic impulse dialers, not touch tone, because we didn't have touch tone. But if you hit a 6, it would go it'd click 6 times. And so our staff, our collection team, we had a collection agency division. I figured they could dial so much faster, we'd pay that $178 a month lease on it.
Well, you had to wait to it.
No, but you could dial all of them at one time and then wait. But it would click them all, one after another. Much faster than you can dial. It really
especially faster than going like this.
Yes. That and wait. You just hit 64217 and it would start dialing.
And they could just sit and wait till it clicked them all off.
That was one of the first things I had. First phone system, first private phone system in Cleveland, Tennessee.
One thing I've noticed, you're always able to boil things down to the absolute lowest common denominator.
Well, I don't know. We need to make full disclosure. I'm related to Dee here. I just want to let the camera realize that we're related. Yeah. So he's asked me a lot of softball questions. He doesn't ask everybody.
Now that was Laverne. Let's go over that again. Laura Slaughter
is our great grandfather.
My grandmother Laverne, my mother Juanita, and your mother Jency were first cousins.
Second cousins.
Second cousin. You sure?
I think so.
I don't think so.
Maybe you're right.
I think I'm right.
Okay.
I usually
that's right. That'd make us
second cousins.
Yes.
But Jency, because Jency used to come to our house.
Yes.
And so Jency's daddy
was J.D.
Slaughter. And Slaughter. And J.D. and my grandmother, Laverne Slaughter, their father was Laura Slaughter.
Whose father was Maston Slaughter, whose father was James Slaughter. It goes back to Jacob Slaughter, that came over in 1749 from Boltenhausen, Germany. That's where I don't know how many greats that is of yours, but we share everybody back to our great-grandparents.
That's where we get our looks.
That's where you did not get fat some way. I don't know how you didn't get fat.
Now let's go back to Kresge's. There was Kresge's, and then there was Revco, across the way.
It was Coles. See, originally, you're talking about the village?
The village.
The village had SS Kresge's there, and they had Coles, which was
Across the street?
No, Coles was right there at the village. Coles would be where workout facility is today.
I never remember Coles. I remember Kresge's, Revco.
Well, Revco bought Coles.
And both. Okay.
So they emerged.
And they both had a little
snack bar.
Snack bar.
Yeah, the Coles was Jack Spratt could eat no fat, and his wife could eat no lean.
That was the name of it?
Apparently, I ate all the fat. Yes, it was called Coles Jack Spratt food counter.
I don't remember that one.
And it said Jack Spratt could eat no fat, and his wife could eat no lean. And I'd sit there and suck down a big old milkshake reading that.
Now the bathrooms in Revco are now the bathrooms of Blood Assurance. I know because I renovated Blood Assurance.
Okay.
So they were the same bathrooms.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's not to move a bathroom.
Yeah. Well, they moved the wall. They just moved the wall that you got to the bathroom.
You can move the wall, but when you start moving bathrooms, you're getting into a lot of expense.
But I don't remember Coles being there. That was way before.
Well, remember you're 12 years younger than I am.
13.
13
or
years
14.
Younger. So it's at 84 to 71. You're 13.
13. Because I graduated in 84. That brings me to this book. This book was a picture taken of one picture taken of everywhere in the world in 1986. You ever see A Day in the Life of America? You ever seen these?
I've never seen them.
Yeah, they're really, really good. They do one like every 10 years. Different photographers, but I guess they don't have photographers anymore. Remember that?
Yes, I do. I'd rather see that girl.
I don't know which one that was. These were. So in 84, I graduated high school. In 86, this was in 86.
But 84, you graduated.
84, I graduated.
But you were not. You were not a superlative in any way.
No, I wasn't a superlative in either.
Now, I watched your discussion with your principal, and you talked about all the fights you got in that were at
Well,
the school.
he got into them. He just expelled me.
He got into a fight. And, I mean, he actually
in a brown suit.
Rolled around in a suit. Mm-hmm. So I thought I'd wear my tie today to honor him for rolling around with that guy. What happened to that guy that he fought? Or that he had
he never did say. He didn't give the guy's name or anything else. No, he said later he got on the right track, I guess. I think that's what he said.
Let's do this.
Okay.
Dale, this is Allan Jones. Jones Wrestling Center, rematch. You and that guy, no time limit, loser shaves his head. Anytime, anywhere. Let's find out who he is. I'll promote it.
That would be good.
That'd be fun.
That'd be really good. Did you watch the Mike Tyson fight last night?
I forgot about it.
No, I watched it.
I forgot about it.
And Roy Jones, it was pay-per-view. It was pretty good. They fought hard. It was really good.
It'd be about like me fighting. I mean, he's old.
Well, they're just 55, 53, 55.
Just, yeah, that's your age, right?
Do you have
Is that crunching?
Yeah, these are
Can
good.
you hear that?
What are these? Wasabi peas?
Those are hot wasabi peas. I better stay off those.
What are they? I mean, what's?
It's just got some type of hot sauce on it. My wife loves those.
They're not really hot.
Peas.
But now tell me about the village now that you own it. Can you walk down through there and be nostalgic? Because when we were growing up, that was the place to be. I mean, that was a big deal.
Well, it was the cultural center of Cleveland. And I've been fortunate to own two cultural centers. The first cultural center we had was Craig Miles Hall, which I bought, I think, in 92 or 93, Craig Miles Hall, and I renovated it.
I don't. Why would that be? To me, that doesn't even come near to the
Well,
village.
remember, we didn't, but when Craig Miles Hall was built in 1878, we didn't have any movie theaters, we didn't have any TV, we didn't have any radio, we had no form of entertainment.
In what year?
1878 when it was built. Walter Craig Miles built it.
Did you know you can walk up to the very top of that and go through a door and come out 2 or 3 buildings down?
Yes. You can. How'd you know that?
I've been through there.
Well, and all the big shows in town. That's like, I mean, it was like that's where everything happened in Cleveland. So
I thought it was Prince Theater.
that was later. That's 1928.
Okay.
I'm talking about 1878. Remember?
Okay, it's 1878.
Let's just say 1878 to 1900. Well, let's say 1878 to. I mean, we didn't have our first. The Bohemian was the first theater, and I think it was about in 22.
Where was it at?
It was across from the courthouse, next to where Cooper's was, I believe. I believe Jimmy Bilbo's office might be there today.
That's Harlan Painter's old office?
No. Harlan Painter's office is on down. It's right across, but that was the old Bohemian Theater. And I can remember it. I never went to it. We always went to the Princess Theater.
But now, prior to that, it was Craig Miles Hall.
Yeah. No, Craig Miles Hall is here, and the Bohemian Theater is south of that.
But you said back in the 18...
Yeah. Craig Miles Hall was the original cultural center. So if we had, if Blind Melagella came to Cleveland, you'd go see them at Craig Miles Hall, the upstairs there. That was the show.
Well, there's no room up there.
There was a lot of room. We've turned it into office space. It was an auditorium, second level auditorium.
That's unusual, wasn't it?
Well, not back then. And then they added electricity later. They had no electricity back then. And they added electricity later.
So they would have a performance with no electricity?
Yes, they'd have candles and lanterns.
Well, that just...
But it was the cultural center. And then the next cultural center is when we built the Village Theater. I mean, the Village Shopping Center.
Yeah.
And it opened in, I think, 61. So it'll be, 60 years next year?
Are you going to have a 60-year anniversary?
If I'm living, I will. Hope to.
I sold grit newspapers there at the Village.
You did?
Yeah.
I bet that was a big business.
You couldn't sell those things. You couldn't give those things away. They were like 75 cents or something. But now there was a camera place.
Yeah, the Hobby Mart.
Hobby Mart.
Mm-hmm.
Hobby Mart.
Hobby Mart.
Yeah, who ran it?
I don't remember.
Do you remember going in there?
I do. And then right across that, on the corner, where
Park Belch.
Park Belch used to be.
Yeah.
Right on the corner of Park Belch is where the Village Hardware used to be, and that's where I got my pellet gun. I think about.
Now the Village Hardware was inside what I remember as Park Belch.
No, it wasn't inside Park Belch. It was just it was an individual building right there. See, Park Belch was expanded into the village. Park Belch wasn't there originally. They added that later.
I didn't know that.
Or they added. I'm sorry. They had several bays there. They took those bays out and
I didn't
Park
realize
Belch expanded. And the village hardware was right there. And I had a Crossman pellet gun, and they had a Sheridan pellet gun. This pellet gun had a real walnut, made of real walnut wood, and it was supposedly the best pellet gun. It was like $32, and the other was like $22. And I wanted that so bad for Christmas. And I went by there. I was going by there checking on it, and every time I was down there, I was like 4th grade. I'd go check on it.
What was there to check on?
Well, I don't know, but one day I went in there right at Christmas time. It had a red tag. It said sold, and I about died. I mean, I was dying that somebody had bought that thing. Mm-hmm. And I got around behind it, and I squeezed around like this, and I saw on there it sold to Bill Jones. I said, yes, Santa Claus got it.
That reminds me of.
That was about the time I figured out Santa Claus too.
That reminds me of when Aunt Bee wanted the bed jacket.
Oh yeah,
and
he swapped.
And the mayor's wife bought it instead of Andy, and she thought Andy had bought it.
Yeah, and then Andy had to swap his favorite fishing rod.
Yeah.
Eagle-eyed Annie.
Yeah, and then he got it back in the end. Somehow.
I think he
got it back somehow.
The mayor wouldn't. The mayor was mean to him. Mayor Stoner was mean. Mayor
Stoner,
Pike was a lot better.
Yeah, Mayor Stoner was. But Andy always came out in the end.
He did.
You know, he always had to tell little white lies, but everybody accepted it because it was for the good.
Andy Griffith is as good as going to Sunday school.
You know, there's a church in Alabama. They, instead of having preaching, they play the episodes.
Well, that's a good.
It's a good idea, and more people would come.
I remember if Sunday school it started coming on Sunday morning. Our Sunday school started at 9:30, and Andy Griffith started at 9:30, and that's when I reached the decision that that Andy Griffith is as good a moral show as going to Sunday school. Mm-hmm. It always taught you a good lesson.
Yeah, and it wasn't sappy like some of these later on they got where shows were like taught you a lesson, but it got too sappy or something.
Right.
You know, he did it and just kept going. If you got the lesson, if you were paying attention, you got the lesson. If you weren't, you didn't really have to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I enjoy it.
I've been watching Barney Miller, and they have those lessons at the end, but it gets silly.
See, Dee, I'm so much older than you that you wouldn't do this, but I was up this morning at 6 o'clock so I could watch The Adventures of Superman that was on from about 1955 to 1958.
Did you set the alarm to do that?
I said Alexa.
So last night before you went to bed, you thought, boy, I'm going to watch The Adventures of Superman in the morning?
Yeah, I did.
So you told Alexis to wake. Did you say?
Yeah, Janie knew what I was doing when I told Alexa what time to get up.
But did you tell Alexis why?
No, I could have. What I could have done is I could have Alexis do an announcement at 5 o'clock, but that had to go through the whole house. But I just let Alexa wake me up, and I went
If you'd
down.
have told Alexis why, that'd have been more embarrassing than actually
This
getting
morning
up.
I had Sterling Holloway. Do you know who Sterling Holloway is? Well, he was the merchant of Mayberry that was on the Andy Griffith show that couldn't ever sell anything. He'd say, "You don't want this."
Oh, no. That wasn't his name that wasn't his character name.
No, but his actor's name was Sterling Holloway.
Yeah.
And Sterling Holloway.
What did he play in later?
Well, he played a lot later. He started out as Peter and the Wolf, which is way before your time. Right. He was the voice of Peter the Wolf, then his voice of Winnie the Pooh, and he was born in Cedartown, Georgia. In fact, poor old Janie, on these Friday trips, she got in one Friday and said, "Where are we going this Friday?" I said, "We're going to see the birthplace of Sterling Holloway."
Where is Cedar, Georgia?
That's down toward Atlanta. You get off the interstate.
Past?
No, it's on this side of Atlanta, but it's not on the interstate. It's off the interstate, 15 or 20 miles.
Did they, when you went to, did the sign say the birthplace of him?
Yes.
So they recognize
They got a brown sign up there.
Does anybody else live in the house now, or?
No, the house is gone. They just have a sign, a plaque.
I'm trying to think what he played in later. He played in.
Well, he was in Superman this morning. He was the mad scientist. Not the mad scientist. He was the scientist that invented some type of process, and the bad guys try to get it from him. And
Bewitched.
Well, he was a character actor.
He played in Bewitched.
Okay, I don't remember him there. You didn't go see his birthplace like I did.
No, but I'm going to.
Okay.
I'm going to go back through all your play. Are you going to write a book one day?
I'm not capable of writing.
They probably somewhere they're saying.
That's Gwen, our cameraman over here, laughing.
Someday they'll say there's somebody in Cedartown, Georgia, was saying, "Hey, we got somebody that's come to see the sign."
Well, I'll tell you where that really happened. Is another place I took Janie to see, and she didn't appreciate this a whole lot. Was I went her to see? I took her to see the grave of Polly Crockett. Polly Crockett was Davy Crockett's first wife, that is buried in Franklin, Tennessee. Few people realize that.
Yeah, I didn't realize that.
And you know who else didn't realize that?
Who?
The Chamber of Commerce. Because I got there and I couldn't figure out where Polly Crockett's grave was. First of all, I had to trick her because she said she's not going to go see Polly Crockett's grave. And I said, "Well, would you consider going to see the birthplace of Philip Fulmer?" "Yes." "Well, that's the same place, Franklin, Tennessee." So she thought we were going to see the birthplace of Philip Fulmer, but really going to see the grave of Polly Crockett. So when I couldn't find it, I called the Chamber of Commerce over there. And I said, "Ma'am, I'm here in town. I was trying to find Polly Crockett's grave."
Now, how did you know it was there?
I read about it in the history books, and I'd been wanting to see it for a while. I mean, Polly Crockett, Davy Crockett's first wife is buried in Franklin, Tennessee. I'm not Franklin, Tennessee. Winchester, Tennessee. I'm sorry.
The king of the wild frontier.
Yes. And so I called the chamber, and she didn't act very interested in it, and just didn't have any clue of it. So I just decided to go into act. I started acting like I was all upset. I said, "Ma'am, I'm all upset." I said, "My wife and I, we're from way up north, up there above Chicago." I said, "We done saved up our money and came down here on vacation. We figured y'all had a Ferris wheel and served cotton candy and stuff, and we heard this was really a nice place down here, Polly Crockett. It's Davy Crockett's first wife, and she's buried here." And we're in I'm in my big motor coach, big Prevost motor coach. I'm driving around Winchester, Tennessee in a motor coach trying to find this grave. So it wasn't easy to do, and I was getting kind of angry because surely somebody knew where this grave was. And so when I complained to her about it, she got somebody else on the phone, and I said, "Look, our whole town's talking about this. There's 4, 5, or 6 more families getting ready to come down here behind me." I said, "We thought this was the vacation capital of the world, going to see Polly Crockett's grave." I said, "Y'all have got to do something." So then I called Philip Fulmer up. Philip grew up in Winchester. He had never heard of that. And I said, "Philip, I can't believe that." So then I start riding around just in the country asking people. I'll never forget pulling up in front of a trailer.
Franklin, Tennessee.
No, excuse me, Winchester, Tennessee.
A lot of hills.
Yes, I pulled up in front of a trailer. They thought Dolly Parton had pulled up in this big motor coach. Lady came running out. "How can I help you?" I said, "I'm looking for Polly Crockett's grave." She said, "Oh, it's right up here." So she finally knew where it was. Well, apparently it was guarded by a bunch of dogs. But what was funny...
What, did they have it fenced in or anything?
No, it didn't, but they had...
church?
They had spent a bunch of money, and somebody had donated a big, new tombstone to it, and it was very tall and had all the history in it. And I called the Chamber of Commerce back and told them about it. And then about a year later, Philip Fulmer writes me a letter and said, "You won't believe what you've done." And enclosed was a newspaper. And I opened it up, and it said Polly Crockett Days. The whole town, they had a Polly Crockett Day. After I had told them all that stuff at the chamber, because they were sitting around saying, "Golly, they've got a bunch of people coming down. I think we got us a Ferris wheel down here."
I guess that's the most famous person from there.
I'd say Fulmer would be the most contemporary famous.
I wouldn't even know who he is. I know it's crazy, but
You
I
know
don't watch
Philip Fulmer.
something
Have
to
you
do
heard
with
of his
football.
name?
Something to do with football.
Well, he's the athletic director at Tennessee.
There's a lady in Anatole that's named Fulmer. That's not the same thing.
No.
Pat Fulmer.
Pat Fulmer?
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, that's our local radio station. WPAT, Pat.
Oh.
We need to know something we call Pat. Philip
Now-
Fulmer's the athletic director.
I don't watch any football. So
Well,
I'm
Philip
oblivious.
Philip had COVID, and he texted me this morning. He just got home. He's okay. He got over it.
Is it
He
getting
got
worse, or is he?
well. He got exiled to his house up in Gatlinburg, and so he went up there by himself. And I was in touch with him, and he's back. He was back
If
today.
you talk to him on the phone, you don't have to get tested, right?
No, I don't think so. I'd have texted him mostly.
Yeah.
He called me. He was still not feeling well. He called me, I guess, Thanksgiving. Talked to me a little bit.
Well, how does he feel? Does he feel like, hey, you don't want this, or?
He had a light case of it. My daughter Abby has it, and Abby is she's going into day 15. It's just lingering. She thinks she's okay, and then it relapses. And
A friend of mine had it, and it just, after about the first 10 days, it seems to just linger, and then leaves.
it's lingering right now.
Is she having trouble breathing or anything?
No, she's okay with that. So
Now, I saw her one time on Fox News.
Did you?
Yeah. She was in the background.
Oh,
She was with the Trump team.
Yeah, she was working for Trump when she got it. She was at the Philadelphia. She was up there doing watching the vote count and she and her whole team got it.
Boy, she doing okay with it?
Yeah, well, she's not. She's feeling bad today. I talked to her earlier. Yesterday she felt like she was well. So tomorrow she might be well. She's hoping to go back to work Monday, but I don't think she'll be able to.
Well, she's in Philadelphia, right?
No, she went back to Washington.
Oh.
Yeah, she's the liaison between the White House and the State Department. So.
Speaking of somebody else buried in Tennessee, Sergeant Carter is buried in Tennessee.
Oh yes, where is he buried?
He's in. It's not Clarksville, but it's the town over.
Right, I believe.
Town up. What was his name?
Sergeant.
No, it was something. Frank.
No, it's Frank Sutton.
Frank Sutton.
Frank Sutton.
That reminds me of that guy we ate lunch with, Sutton.
J. Sutton Taylor.
Now, J. Sutton Taylor is, if I remember correctly, he is the first person that made a citizen's arrest in Bradley County. Is that right?
Yes. For only one I've seen.
Was you there at that time?
I was there, but the guy took a swing at him, and all the police officers jumped on him. So I'm not sure who arrested who that day. But no, they said they're going to put him under arrest. And
the person that swung at him.
Well, he had hit him in the mouth. Okay. He called the police, and the police showed up. They had 3 police officers there, and they said, "Charlie, you're under arrest." And he said, "No, sir. No, sir. You're not putting him under arrest. I, J. Sutton Taylor, citizen, Bradley County, state of Tennessee, hereby place you under citizen's arrest." About that time, Charlie swings, and all 3 police officers jump on him. It's the biggest brawl you'd ever seen. I was 16, out there at Hardee's watching all this.
Was Sutton serious?
Oh, Sutton. Yeah, Sutton was brilliant.
I mean, he was serious as a hard day. He was really making a citizen's arrest.
Yes.
Not like Gomer Pyle.
By the time we were 16, Sutton had Tennessee Code annotated and American jurisprudence in his room on the wall, and he'd read every volume of it and underlined it and noted it, and
So he knows more than most lawyers.
He knows as much law as anybody. I'm sure he could just pass his bar simply, very easily.
I noticed his hair is always he's got a lot of hair.
Well, Sutton's also the first, he was the first notary public in Bradley County. He read the law all the time, and they changed the law to where where the notary dropped from 21 to 18, and Sutton got the first application. Of course, I'll never forget him being in the paper. His glass was broken here, and he's like this in the paper. That's what he looked like that.
You ought to get that from the paper and frame it.
I could, yeah. He's top fold, front page, I believe.
Yeah, as the first notary
youngest notary public in Tennessee.
That used to be. That doesn't have the importance. It seems like when I was growing up, people would have a sign in their yard, "Notary Public" inside.
Right.
Like that was a big deal.
Well, it was harder. I mean, nobody knew about it and didn't realize. A notary is simply swearing to a signature.
Now, prior to that, what did they do?
Well, I don't know, because I'm a notary. I became a notary, and it said, "Sworn to and subscribed before me, I, Allan Jones," I signed my name, "and my commission expires." You're commissioned by the Bradley County Commission. You do your application to Bradley County. They designate you a notary, and then you have to get a seal. You have to pay a bond. You have to get like $100 bond.
What's the bond for?
Well, you know what? We could talk about bonds a long time.
Yeah.
You're a builder. You have to be bonded sometimes.
Sometimes.
But sometimes there's bonds that don't. You need to get in the bond, sell bonds that nobody can ever collect on.
Yeah, because I don't know what the bond would be to be a notary.
Well, like for checking to cash. Here's a good example of crazy bonds.
Checking it. Where have I heard that name?
Checking to cash has to be in probably about half or 3/4 of our state. We have to be bonded. Now, what we're bonded for, I don't know, but we have to pay $200 or $300, $500 to be bonded. So if I give you $500 or give you $200 loan and hand it to you, and you've got my money, I don't have your money. You've got my money. The only thing we're bonded for is if you come in and say, "Will you loan me $200?" and I say yes, and I look in the door and say, "Oops, we don't have $200." You technically could file against a bond. That's what you're bonded for. But it's just crazy. It's just a good example of how our laws just get sideways, because some law, they say, "I'll go along with that. I want you to be bonded." So you sign a bond. As a collection agency owner, we had to be bonded for client funds.
The customer should be bonded, not
Well,
you.
I guaranteed the client funds. I bought a collection agency up in. I bought the assets of a collection agency in Knoxville. It went belly up. I got the computer information and turned it over to get the clients paid, and gave a copy of the bond to the clients to file to get their money. And the bond company said, we don't pay when somebody steals the money. Well, hell, when do you pay?
Yeah, what's the point?
There is no point. That's what I'm saying. We need to get in the bonding business where you sell bonds. If there's no way to collect.
Just get in a position where we can require people to get bonded.
Yeah, well,
say you're mowing yards.
Well,
okay, we want to require you.
If you do a subdivision, you have to be bonded, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I just got a building permit. Had to get a bond for $5,000.
Okay. No, that wasn't a $5,000. It was a $5,000 bond.
But it was like $300 or something.
Yes, it was about $300.
Yeah.
Well, here's what it's bonded for. I had a situation like that, and I called the city when they didn't build the road as wide as they had to a city road standard, and they said, well, you know what, bond's not worth the paper it's written on. That's what I'm saying. If anybody wants to get in the business right now, you ought to start
if you
the
wanted
bonding.
To get in the
start a
business,
bonding company with you don't have
you
to
could
pay
require
off.
people that mow yards to be bonded, and what would that mean?
Well, it depends on who's the bond's in the favor of. Is it in favor of you not showing up every Friday to mow the yard, or is it what's it cover? You have to read the bond.
Well, in your case,
see.
what does it say it covers?
Well, it says it guarantees that we have the money to lend you.
But they've already got it.
Why would we have to open our doors? I mean, we just close the door if we didn't have the money to lend you. Why would you have to be a bond? It's just an example of government gone awry. There's no reason to have laws.
Did government always be that way? I mean, back when J. Sutton Taylor got his notary, was it crazy then?
We had to be bonded. And what he's saying, I mean, but if you file against the bond, he's not, the bonding company always has a route out, so they're not going to guarantee you a fraudulent signature. And that's what the notary's swearing to, is I saw Dee Burris sign that name right there. That's his signature.
All right, now he didn't sign it. Somebody else signed it, and we get the building that he sold.
But that's fraudulent. So the bonding company won't pay off for fraud. See, I've got you a good business here. You need to get a bonding company and start selling. Get you a bunch of agents across the country and sell these $200 and $300 bonds. You give the agent $100, and you get a couple $100 just float in. And if you get a claim, just say, we don't cover fraud.
Was everything as complicated then as it is now?
No, I tell you what I've seen.
I remember it as not being.
Dee, when I started checking the cash in 1993, checking the cash was the most simple industry of any industry I've ever seen. You came in and got $100. You wrote your check for $115, and we gave you $100. Now, if you can't figure out how much you're paying, you're not very bright. But we had to do an APR disclosure. And the APR disclosure said that APR was 391%. So a guy just paid you $15 and you're trying to explain to him how 391% equals $15. That's complicated. Now, but what happened is it was so simple. Before, we didn't have to do the APR disclosure when we first started. Then they passed the first law and the second law and the third law. And now it is our business is so complicated. To do a $200 loan, we have so much compliance. You have no idea. And right now, nobody can go in business to compete with us because it's, any small business. We got 6 full-time lawyers on staff working for us. But it's taken, I've just watched the government take a very simple transaction. It doesn't affect the consumer at all. A very simple transaction and make it so complicated that it's very difficult to. And
in your business, if they don't like it, they don't have to come back.
That's right.
I mean, it's only 7 days or 14
days?
It's
till your next payday, which is usually a couple of weeks.
That's why you get. But what check into cash? What is check into cash?
Well, you turn your check into cash. Our first customer.
Do they have to have a check?
have to have a checking account, yes, an active checking account.
What if we don't have an active checking account?
We can't do business with you because you have to have an active checking account.
Why don't they just say, I'll bring it in? Raise your right.
We do that now.
Like they did the Pennsylvania election.
Yeah, we could we could do that now, but in the start you have to write a check. We could do that today, but we don't. We have to have an active checking account.
As your policy.
Active checking account. We would take your bank statement, and we'd take your paycheck, bring your pay stub and your bank statement in. We'd look at the bank statement, and we'd see your pay stub, and we'd see that amount going into your bank account. And then we would make a copy of that, and then we'd open an account with you. And then we didn't have to look at anything again because we knew you had to have a bank account. So we'd hold the account, the check for 2 weeks, and you either come by and pick it up, or we'd deposit it. Now, the very first customer at Checking to Cash was he was the
1993.
It was 1993. The first customer was the head of recruiting for the Army recruiting office down there at the village. Was at the village at the time, and he came in on a Friday to get $100, and his Saturday was his son's birthday, and his money had not come from the government. He said, "I work for the federal government. There's nobody to call. It's going to be here, and if I don't come up with this bicycle for Saturday's birthday, my name's mud." So we gave him $100 on Friday. He came back on Tuesday and paid us back. Or he came back, picked up his check for $115 on Tuesday. Now, I don't know what the APR, we'd have to figure out an APR disclosure.
Well, that's not really and they say APR, but most people don't know what APR means.
Well, it's an annual percentage rate,
yeah.
and if you take an annual period from 1 year to the second year to the third year, it works. But if you come to anything less than a year, it becomes erratic and meaningless. So if you have a 6% mortgage, from 1 year in 1 year's time, you're going to pay 6 cents on the dollar. It's going to interest. But if you come in, if you do it for 2 weeks, you're going to get some number like $3.91. Your fee is $15, but your APR is $3.91, which has no meaning to you. You'd have to come in 26 times in a row on the exact same date to do that. It'd be the equivalent of going out here to go in and to get a room for the night at a hotel, and they say you have to sign this. It's $5,000 a year. Well, I just want it for one night. Well, still the government makes you quote it.
So if I go in and rent a motel room for $99, say $100, they'd say sign this document saying that staying here per year is $365,000.
Yes, that's what you're doing.
And I'd say, well, I'm only going to stay here one night.
That's right. So we're the only industry that has to give a quote for a year's worth of service for 2 week transactions.
That they've not got.
Yeah, there should not be an APR disclosure for anything less than a year. For example, Walmart has an average markup of 30%. Most everybody has 100% markup. So if you have a sport coat that sells for, you buy it for $100, you sell it for $200. But Walmart has a 30% markup. And their average shelf life is 2 weeks. And if you take their average shelf life on their average markup, their APR would be 730%. But they're still the cheapest in town, pretty much.
But why do they pick on your industry?
Well, because they can. I mean, it's like several of the, most of the liberals, they understand it, but they understand that they can also make the consumer believe something completely different.
Or is it that you're in an industry that can afford it?
No, the industry doesn't make that kind of money. The industry, I've done well at because I've opened up 1,300 of them. But the industry just makes very minute amount of money. If there was a lot of money, remember I had a reporter from Los Angeles call me one time about all the money we're making. And I said, "Where are you?" He said, "Downtown Los Angeles." I said, Look out the window. Do you see are y'all in downtown, one of those big skyscrapers?" "Yes." I said, "Look out your window. What other skyscrapers do you see?" He said, "Well, I see Wells Fargo. I see Third National Bank. I see Bank of America." I said, "And?" He said, "And what?" "Where's the payday loan skyscrapers?" We don't have any skyscrapers. You understand? That's where the people are making the big money. See, they're making, they'll loan, I've had one loan for $135 million one time. It's a lot more profitable to loan one guy $135 million than loan 135,000 people $100.
A whole lot less paper, less work, yeah. I would think.
Oh, it's the same work, pretty much. So,
but where did your ability get to? I've like I said earlier, you're able. I've known you for a while, and you're able to just in a split second, you can reduce something down to the bare minimum, and that's what you've done with checking the cash. You've taken that business or it's what it was initially.
Well, initially it was.
But what I want to know is where'd you get that ability to do that?
I don't know. I think I just had the ability to see opportunity. Like I mentioned to you, I had the very first telephone in Cleveland. I didn't tell you I had some other firsts. I had the very first automatic underground water sprinkling system. Actually, it was the second. Jim Webb had the first, and I had the second, but I didn't realize he had one. I thought I had the first for a while. I owned the first fax machine in Cleveland, Tennessee. I had one at my office. I had one at Cleveland, Cherokee Valley Federal.
Fax machine.
A fax machine, because when I realized I could we would take credit reports and deliver it to them. And I had a little Randy that works for me, Randy Jarrett, would deliver those things up.
Matador.
The Matador. When I found out I could take that thing and just put it through a machine and zip it to them on the phone, that was a big savings for me. I had the first Segway in Cleveland. I had the first cell phone in Cleveland, Tennessee. I got a cell phone so far in advance, we didn't have any service up here. And I would take I would go up to Hilltop Holiday Inn and park my car facing toward Chattanooga and stand up on the front bumper and get on my tiptoes, and I could make a phone call. And
it was still faster.
And it was still impressive. And by the time the cell phones came, my battery was dead, and I had to go get a new battery.
But that doesn't answer my question. Where did you get the ability to boil stuff down to the least common denominator in such a quick manner?
I don't know. I just have always been able to get right to the point, I think, of what people are talking about when I'm not going around. But I still think I got some more firsts. I can't think of them all right now.
What about computers? Were you first in computers?
No. We were early. I was one of the first. In 1981, I automated our collection operation. I bought my dad's credit bureau in 1977. Dad owned the credit bureau in Cleveland. And he had 6 credit reporters, and he had a little collection agency called the Collection Service Division.
Now, where was that located?
Is it 215 2nd Street, where the Jones Building is today. I added on to the Jones Building. He had the smaller building there that's still there. And so when I bought when I went to work for him, I headed up the collection side.
Now, had you graduated from college?
No, I'd come home. I was married and had a baby, and I needed to be at home. And Dad was sick. Dad had emphysema. And
was he a smoker?
He was a smoker, and he was struggling in business. And Mother talked me into coming back. And the plan was for me to maybe quit school or stabilize the business. And then,
wasn't that unusual for a
back.
mother to want to be thinking about you leaving college?
Well, I know, but she wanted me to stabilize the business.
So it was needing stabilizing.
Yes. So I came in. I was just 20 years old, and I'll never forget my first day, and I'd worked for a little collection agency over there for 90 days.
Now, did you hate coming back, or was college not your thing anyway?
No, I needed to come. I was worried about him, and I was worried about the credit bureau, and I was worried about I was in a bad marriage, and a lot of things going on.
Oh, you was already married in college?
I was married in college. I got married.
Well, that's not too smart, is it?
No, I made it all the way to Thanksgiving. I got married at Thanksgiving my freshman year. And so then my wife got pregnant, and I had Courtney, and I ended up raising Courtney by myself. But what happened is when I came back to work for Dad, I'll never forget the collection agency. He had a collection manager that I was anxious to work with. I'd gone to work for Associated Collectors in Murfreesboro. And while I was there, I got a copy of every collection letter, every office manual, every procedural manual. They were a big operation. They had
Had
5
you already
locations.
worked for your dad in the summers and stuff?
No. Yeah, I couldn't figure out exactly what the credit bureau did or didn't do. I didn't understand reading credit reports, but I understand the collection side of it, on how to make phone calls and how to ask for money. I was good at that. So the credit reporting side did $6,000 a month in fee, and the collection side did $3,000 a month in fee. And so he put me in charge of the collection side. And the very first day he hired me, his collection manager didn't show up at 8 o'clock. His collection manager showed up at 10 o'clock, and Dad fired him. And I was disappointed. I was wanting to work with him, and I had a bunch of ideas to help him with. And Dad said he's tired of it. He's been late every day, and he comes sashaying in at 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock, and he said, we start at 8 o'clock. And I said, well, who's in charge? He said, you are.
And you're 20.
I'm 20. My first day on the job, I'm in charge. And it didn't take me long to make the first lady quit. I ended up, all 4 people that worked for Dad, that worked for me, quit. The first one walked out the door. Here's Byron Wilson, who's still around town. Byron was one of our collectors. Great guy. Poor Byron, he was not a very good collector, but a really good guy, and I liked him a lot. But we had this lady, when I got there, I was trying to figure out the business, and I noticed at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they would all stop, and they'd put their feet up, and they'd lick envelopes. I called it licking envelopes. They'd send collection letters, okay, and they'd talk between themselves. We'd been calling all day long, leaving messages. Well, guess what happened at 4 o'clock? The factories had closed, shifts had gotten home. That's about the time the people are coming home, and they're calling back. And they didn't want to be fooled with those phone calls coming in. Well, I figured out that's the debtor calling back. That's the person that we want to speak to. All these other calls was leaving messages all day long, and the person calling back is the consumer we need to speak to. So I put an end to that, and I created prime time from 4 to 5. From 4 to 5 is prime time. And they had to be on the phone, and we're going to lick envelopes in the morning. What they'd do is hand address a collection letter, they'd put it in the envelope, they'd put the stamp on it, they'd lick it and close it. Took forever. And so I had them on the phone nonstop. And every time I'd come in at 4:15 or something, I'd be out trying to get more business. They'd all be sitting around talking. I said, it's prime time. We're supposed to be on the phone. They said, oh, we forgot. Well, I went up to the drugstore, Kohl's drugstore, which is downtown. Got me a little alarm clock, and I just set the alarm clock at 4 o'clock. Well, one day I was in there at 4 o'clock, and this alarm clock, that usually I wasn't back by 4 o'clock. I was out making sales calls. This time I came back early. The alarm clock goes off in front of this lady's desk drawer. And Byron Wilson, as a joke, because she hated my alarm clock, and he had put the alarm clock in her drawer. And she opened that drawer up and saw that alarm clock, and she gritted her teeth, and she cleaned out her operation, and she walked out the door. She went to work for Ray Davis, who was a collection lawyer. And she worked for Ray Davis the rest of her life. But she got to see me build, she got to watch me go from that one little office that she didn't like to the biggest collection agency in Tennessee, and she was still a one-person operation. So,
because of things like an alarm clock. You see what I'm talking about, boiling it down?
Well, I figured out real quick that if you're calling people right now, what's the best time? The best time to call people at home when they're home is during a snowstorm. That's the best time. Mm-hmm. And of course, nobody could make it into work, and I had a 4-wheel drive. I'd go pick you up. But I took the credit bureau in 1978. I went to work there in 74. In October, and I think it was October of 78, the collection operation did $12,000. Now we were at $3,000. Dad's side did $6,000 and I did $12,000. And he had sold me the credit bureau the year before.
12,000 what?
In fee, our fee income.
In how long?
That's a month. That was a month's revenue. Now that doesn't sound like a lot today, but remember our collectors just.
Well, but then you had to pay.
Collectors made like $400 or $500 a month is all they made.
Yeah.
So it was a. And then what happened then? You asked we automated. Dad had failed to automate in the credit reporting side, and we got locked out of the credit reporting side. And Chilton Corporation, which was the credit bureau of Dallas, automated the entire state, the big merchant-owned credit bureaus. So it's kind of hard to understand this, but back then, each credit bureau was owned by a merchant association, like the Chamber. Now, Cleveland, Tennessee, and Athens, Tennessee, and these little bitty towns were private, but Chattanooga, Memphis, Nashville, Jackson, Nashville, Knoxville were all owned by merchants association. And so they were the big operators. So they were doing more credit reports in a day than we would do in a month almost. And they automated ahead of us and overlaid us. And so I grew up with learning that Dad should have automated early. He waited too late, and we've now been locked out in the credit reporting side. So on the collection side, as soon as their automation came out, I automated back in 1981. And we went cardless back in 1981, which was a long time. That kind of answers that question. But Dad, every manual credit bureau in the state got ran out of business except me. So if you think about Cleveland, Tennessee.
How did you hang in there?
Well, here's what I did.
When you say run out, you mean by competition?
The big merchant-owned bureaus overlaid us.
Yeah. And
they would hit them first and come to us second. And at some point, they didn't need us anymore.
Right.
So the credit bureau Chattanooga, they came up to take Dad and I to lunch one day, and they tried to buy us. They started explaining how they're overlaying us, and we already knew all that. And Dad said, "Well, I just sold to Allan. You'll have to talk to him. He's bought the company." And Jack Price and George Lundy were the two guys, and Lundy was in his 70s and Jack was in his 60s. And I remember them saying, "Well, you have to talk to Allan. Allan, what do you think?" And they took, "Allan, what do you think?" And I said, "Well, Jack, how old are you?" He said, "I'm 62. George, how old are you?" "I'm 75. I said, "Well, I'm 22. Why don't y'all sell to me? Y'all ought to be ready to retire by now." Well, it made perfect sense to me, but that angered them. Uh-huh. And so we just kind of, at that point, the gloves were off. And so I started kind of battling them. And then I ordered later. Dad died in 1981, and he was kind of friends with those guys. And I was determined to win. And I ordered their charter, and I found out that Credit Bureau Chattanooga had 1,000 members. But in 1919, they had incorporated the company, and they only had 53 shareholders. So 53 people owned the company that didn't even realize they owned the company, this asset. So I went down and made a tender offer and offered them $1 million for it. And when they turned me down, after I wrote the letter and the board voted to turn me down, then I went to the individual shareholders and say, "Look what they did to you." And the first person I went to was Hardy and Caudle, who was it was a clothing company, and told them I'd give them $5,000 for their certificate, for their credit bureau.
Were they getting anything, proceeds
No,
off of that?
they didn't even know they owned the company.
Well, how could they not know they owned it? Was it
Because it was bought in 1919, and at some point, when the other members started trying to join, they just gave them a certificate instead of ownership certificate, and nobody ever paid any attention to it, and I figured it out. So then I automated. I bought the credit bureau of Tullahoma, credit bureau of Winchester. Bought the credit bureau of Athens. I caught the Murfreesboro Credit Bureau was owned by the Merchants Association. I talked them into giving it to me for me to automate it, and I went to Cookeville, and they were owned by the Merchants Association, but they were small and being shut out. I got them to give me their business, give it to me, not sell it. I'd automate it for them. And then I had to have money to do this. I started taking some wild risk on the stock market, and I made $100,000 trading stock options.
Now let's pause there for 1 second. So I'm with Charlie McKenzie. You know, I've got my memory. One thing I've got is a good memory. I'm with Charlie McKenzie. We're driving down Worth Street. We come up to the red light. I'm in his truck. And he says, "See that guy going across there?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "He just made $100,000 in the stock market." That's like saying $2 million today.
Well, that made $1 million.
Well, whatever it was,
I was 30 years old.
So this was probably 85, 86, yes, maybe.
83.
And that would have been 83. So I was right. Mm-hmm. And so if I was...
You were in high school then.
I was probably just out of high school or right in.
Yeah, well, I made it in 83. You might have been telling you the story later.
No, we saw you going across the street.
But
that's why he stopped so you could go by.
What I'd done is I'd bought Coleco.
So he was right.
I'd started trading. I started trading these options. I remember my first option. I bought I made $10,000 in a week.
What, did you have some discretionary money that you could?
No, I just started with. I took $5,000 on January. Now, my other money went to convert the credit bureau. See, the credit bureau, I
When
converted.
You say your other money.
Well, I made this. I was trading. I learned to trade stock options, and I got lucky, and I made some money. And I used that to convert. I had to convert all these records. 100,000 back in 1983, 82 was a lot of money. And the Credit Bureau of Houston, I automated with the Credit Bureau of Houston. It's called the Pinger system. But the Pinger system was the sorriest system out there, and the best system was Chilton. And Chilton had the strongest state file in the country. It was right here in Tennessee, and I've got the sorriest system in the country taking on the strongest system in the country. But that's how I funded it, was trading stock options. And then...
Wasn't that pretty risky?
Well, yeah,
I mean, it could have gone the other way.
I know, but I had no choice. I had to risk it. I had to get out there and risk it, or every single credit bureau went out of business except mine.
Did you know that you had to risk it and take a chance to make money on bonds, or you wouldn't make it?
Yes, I knew I had to make it. I had to get the company automated. And so then once I got it automated and got the system in, once I had automated, then I encircled Chattanooga, and that's why I made the run on the tender offer to buy the Credit Bureau of Chattanooga. And those guys just didn't like me at all, because they were basically running the credit bureau. It's like screwing up the Chamber of Commerce, Mm-hmm. There was nobody really telling them what to do. They had they handpicked the board and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So when I went in and made a tender offer of $1 million, I didn't have $1 million. This is before the stock market thing. I didn't have $1 million, but I knew it was enough to get the greed going, and it was worth more than that. It ended up, they agreed when I stirred everything up. The shareholders all organized. When I wrote the letter, so I offer you $1 million, they wrote a letter back and said, "We have taken to the board and we chose not to accept your offer." And I wrote my famous letter. I was like in my 20s. "We shall vote again." And I went and got the stockholders, and I learned how to organize them. And I kicked their board off. And a lady named Nelda Davis was the hottest at me. She was at the Chattanooga Power Board. And those stock certificates end up selling. Let me tell you this one story. Jim Williams, who recently passed away, he called me during all that and said, "Allan, we need the credit." He was head of the bank. What was it? Old Cleveland National Bank up here. AmSouth. No, he was president of Cleveland National Bank.
Cleveland National Bank.
And they sold out to, I guess, his regions. And they had sold to regions, and regions, he needed to open an office in Chattanooga, and he didn't need to join the credit bureau. And I said, "I'll tell you what, Jim, instead of getting that there's a $10 certificate, and then there's a $20 certificate. They'll give you the $10 certificate, but you ask for the $20 certificate." So he got the $20 certificate, and 8 months later, he sold that $20 certificate for $135,000. because what I did is they got so mad at me, they decided to vote. They voted to sell it to anybody but me, and the other people, TRW came in and paid $6.5 million for the credit bureau. Now, Chilton Corporation was after it. Remember, Chilton was the big company that was after me. And they weren't after me. I mean, I was like a dot to them. But when I couldn't get the credit bureau Chattanooga to automate me, I took the red-eye flight to Dallas, and I went down to see Van Smith, the executive VP of Chilton Corporation. Dee, I walked into his office, and I've never seen an office that big. It was huge. It was really long. It's like walking into the Wizard of Oz. You know, he's way down there at the end.
Yeah.
And I walked in that big office, and the credit bureau of Chattanooga told me I couldn't afford to automate. That's what they said. You can't afford it. So I fly to Dallas. I meet with Chilton, and I tell them who I am, and I want to automate with them. And the first thing he said is, "You just can't afford it." And I just went. I said, "You let me decide what I can afford." And I told Van Smith that day, I said, "Look, you have a chance to harness me, and you're not going to, and I'm going to bring competition to the state. And you have a chance to harness me right now." And he was very kind to me. He knew I'd flown down there, but he just wasn't going to he wasn't even fool with me. So I came back to Cleveland, and that's when I automated with the Pinger system and went after him. And once I encircled them like that, the Pinger system merged with CBI Equifax, and they had something called Strategic Alliance. And so they came to me and offered me, tried to buy my credit reporting operation. They ended up paying me 6 times annual revenue for it. And once I did that, I decided to sell to them. That was a big lick. I was in my early 30s. I'd already made $1 million in the stock market, which is probably my second million. And then this was $1,750,000. I put cash that went straight in my pocket. There was no debt or anything on it. And after I did that, what I did is I put CBI Equifax in a position to take every Chilton, to annihilate Chilton Corporation. And when I inked my deal with Equifax in Atlanta, they picked up the phone, and the credit bureau of Memphis, Nashville, Chattanooga, Knoxville, Jackson, all came off the Chilton system in one contract agreement.
But you didn't get any more than just the $1.7 million. That was what you got.
No,
the
I
rest
didn't.
was revenge.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you know how that revenge came back last season when I was down in Palm Beach?
How?
I was at the the beach club there, and I met a guy named Bob Chilton.
Did you say, "Hey, I knew a Chilton"?
I said, "Are you?" He's 20 years older than me. I said, "You J.E.R. Chilton III?" "I am." I said, "I'm Allan Jones, Cleveland, Tennessee."
He said, "You bastard."
He did. He said, "I sold my business on account of you." He said, Borg Warner came and said, "If Credit Bureau of Cleveland could do, if a little bitty town like you could do that to me, think one of those big credit bureaus could do to me." And
all because of software, I guess, right?
It was because I was able to. It was just a combination of a lot of things.
No, I think it was the software, but you were able to see how it could be simplified. You're simplifying.
Well, no, I just became, Cleveland, Tennessee was the only credit bureau that survived that was privately owned in Tennessee. There's probably 40 or 50 of them.
Because of what reason?
Because I had the guts to start trading stock options and take a risk and automate, and I sold that. I ended up selling what I bought for $100,000 for, I think I got $12 million for it all at one point. I didn't sell that. I sold the credit, the collection agency that started here in Cleveland, Tennessee was the biggest. When I sold it, we had offices from Atlanta to Memphis, and we were the biggest collection agency in Tennessee.
You weren't a small potato at the time, anyway, right?
No, we were not. People, they think when I, checking the cash did all this stuff. That's not true. I was funding out of my pocket. When I started checking the cash, I remember, and when I was 40 years old. I was 30. I was going to be 40 years old in in 6 months, and I put $1 million of my own money into the company to expand it, and we went from we were going to try at 40 locations at the end on my 40th birthday. Instead, we had 63 locations
For the check cashing.
check into cash.
Now we've skipped a section there.
Yeah, we're skipping all over
We
the
skipped
place. I'm what you call a skiptophrenic, I guess.
Well, but let's go back to that. It seems to me like you boiled even the credit bureau and the collections down to a simplified version.
I did, but I was very brass, and I was gutsy, and I would take risks.
They could have gone either way.
Yeah, I remember the Dad, when I went to work for the credit bureau as a collection agency, the biggest client in town was Bradley Memorial Hospital, and we didn't have the hospital. You know, Brayfield Sims had the hospital. He had a Creditors Adjustment Bureau, and I couldn't get him to do business with me. To make a long story short, I was like 24 years old, and I did an audit of the hospital to see where the collection records were, and that's another big story in itself, but I ended up...
This is the hospital that you were born at?
The hospital I was born at. Dad was so nervous, he couldn't take it. He was such a nice guy, and I was tough.
What were you doing, just sticking your nose where it didn't belong?
Well, I wanted the business, and they were a public entity, and they can't just do whatever they want to do. Bradley Memorial Hospital was owned by the county.
So you made it look like you were doing it?
No, under the county, that had their medical records are private, but their business records are public, and I asked to see their business records of their collection agency.
I bet that went over
That
well.
went over real well. They called me up. They called me up there. They wrote a letter back, said, we will let you see the records. You come at 4 o'clock on this day. And I showed up at 4 o'clock, and I'm sitting at the end of the table right there. And they had the entire board there. I'm 24 years old. And they had Gilbert Milholland here from the Credit Claims and Collections in Atlanta.
And the only reason they agreed to meet you is because you had brought up that.
Because I had them over a barrel on the legal issue.
Yeah.
But I was the only one, and I told them if the DA wouldn't prosecute them, I'd hire another prosecutor to prosecute them. I was tough.
J. Sutton Taylor.
J. Sutton Taylor do a citizen's arrest. So anyway, I remember Pat Thigpen went first. He said, I got the utmost respect for the hospital. And they said, if you're going to look at their records, they're going to get to look at your records. I said, well, I don't care. And Gilbert Milholland got up and said, I have respect for the hospital. I'm not going to look at Mr. Jones's records. And Pat Thigpen, a Creditors Adjustment guy, said, we have respect for the hospital. We're not going to look at Mr. Jones's records. And I said, well, I don't have much respect because if you don't, you're welcome to look at mine because by God, I'm going to look at yours. And I just raked them in. Anyway, it's a.
So did you get that account?
Yeah, and what's interesting, you're a recipient of some of that.
I am.
Yeah, because
Where's it at?
Because I was going to put Howard Coons in jail, and if you know the blood assurance down there,
Oh yeah.
that's the Howard Coons room I donated in his name. He and I got to be great friends.
You know, that's right. What was it? His name had to be somewhere.
It's in the room there, at blood assurance.
Yeah, I had to put it up somewhere.
You know, the hospital was colluding to get rid of me one time up there.
Now let's go back to you being born there.
All right,
Aren't you
that's another first.
Aren't you the second person being there?
No, I'm the first.
Oh.
Thank you, Larry, down there. Yeah, we argue who gets
Was
to
he
be
the second?
First. Well, he was the second about, I think. I think he was born January 3rd. I was born December 3rd.
You know, if you're driving on Brown Avenue and you look over towards his place, he'll be waving at you.
Yeah. He's such a great guy.
He is, yeah.
I pick up the phone and order things from him all the time to this day.
Mm-hmm. He has your sizes down and everything.
Yes.
He says I'm his fastest customer.
Oh, do you go?
I can walk in 5 minutes, be out. He's done. It takes him longer to write it up than it does me to buy it.
Sometimes I find kids that I know is really going to go well, and I found a kid like that, and I called up Larry. I said, Larry, I'm going to send, I gave this Navy blazer to him. I said, I'm going to get these top khaki pants. I want I want you to order a couple of Gitman shirts. Those are $150 a piece. I need 5 Gitman shirts. And I want you to make sure they have cuffs on and I want some, those Oxford Weeghens type. And when this guy reports to college, I want them to think he didn't go to Cleveland High School. I want them to think he went to Macaulay or Baylor. You understand? And so I can just handle all that over the phone with Larry.
What's the Oxford Weegens? Is that shoes?
It's right here. These are Oxford. These are. You want to talk about shoes for a while?
I'd rather talk about those socks.
Oh, my socks.
That's awful. Oh, that's a wild color.
I can't get them. Can you see that? There we go. To get these socks right here, let me pull that over to the side. Let's
how
shoot
far
to
do
this
you have
camera here.
How far do you have to chase them?
Well, I can't. There they are. See the cat right there?
Looks like you got
to
it
get
on the
these
inside
socks,
out.
I got these socks from the Cat Man. He's
Are
the
they
biggest.
on the inside out?
No, they're right. They're just
Okay.
old.
They're just the way they look.
You got to go down to Key West and negotiate with the biggest weirdo at Mowry Square, the Cat Man. He starts out wanting $25 a pair, but if you buy 100 pair of them, you get them cheap.
Are they?
I'll get you a pair.
Get me a pair.
I'll get you a
Are
pair.
Are they handmade?
No, they're cat pea yellow though. I just thought that was good looking.
But what is it special about them?
I don't know. He just had them on, and once I bought them, I don't wear anything but Catman socks.
Aren't they sort of a juxtaposition or something like a, a juxtaposition's like when you wear, something that's out of place. Like you wear some expensive clothes, but then you got on.
I don't know what made me start wearing Catman socks, but
But does he make them himself?
He has them made. He has a cat show on Mowry Square down in Key West, and I've been around him a lot. In fact, if you buy 100 pair of Catman socks from him, he'll invite you to his house to meet all of his cats.
Does he have a place?
He's got a house, yeah. He's got a house.
Does he have a place of business, or
No,
is he just on the street?
he just has them printed up. He's a street vendor.
So how much
He's
are
a
those?
Frenchman. I think I got these for like $10 maybe.
So for $1,000,
Yeah, you can have a bunch of cats. Yeah.
I can go see his cats.
Yeah, you can go see his cats. And, here's what really got him going. I was on the.
I don't guess I'll see his cats.
I was on the what show?
Oh, tell me about.
I was on the Fox News.
Yeah, tell me about how does that compare to this?
There's a lot of prettier women there.
Yeah.
And
but besides that,
well, if I was on Fox News, I'd probably try to talk about my material on my leg, see if I get Gretchen to grab my leg or something.
I remember you talking one time about you just went into a room and it made it look like a studio.
Well, I've been on there many times. The first time, I just didn't want to go up there, and they sent me to Chattanooga, and the Channel 9 did it, and they put me in I'm getting ready to go on the Fox and Friends in the Morning, which is a real popular show around the world, not just here, around the world.
Or it was.
It was.
Yeah.
And they put me in a closet. You open a closet.
You went to Chattanooga?
Door. I went to Chattanooga.
Not to New York.
No, I wouldn't go to New York. And then they wanted me to go to Atlanta, so I won't go to Atlanta.
Oh, so you just
They called me back 3 times. They said, what about Chattanooga? Well, I'll go to Chattanooga.
Why did they want you on there?
I forgot now what I was talking about.
Was it the football ads?
No, I can't remember now what it was.
The jackets?
So, I think it's about insurance. We're going to have to provide
Oh, yeah.
all this insurance.
So you go down there for like a Zoom thing?
Well, no, you didn't know I wasn't in the studio. But what happened is I opened the closet. They opened the closet, and there's a little chair, not these nice, fancy, expensive chairs like you got.
Those are expensive.
Those little bitty, flimsy chairs like you buy at Walmart that fold up, steel chairs. And they put a steel chair down, and behind me was a curtain. It had a city in it, and I had an American flag and 2 American flags behind me. So it looked like I was in a big city. Mm-hmm. And I was in a closet in Chattanooga. And the guy gives me a microphone, and then he leaves. And I thought, see, right here, people don't realize I have a monitor. Dee has a monitor right here that I can see me on right now, and I can see what's being broadcast. Well, I didn't have any of that. So I'm getting ready to go on World TV, and I wasn't even sure what I was supposed to talk about and who I was talking to. And I had an earphone in to hear with, and they said, Mr. Jones, yes. Are you ready? I said, yes. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2. We're live. And I'm like, hello. It was wild. And I talked for a minute and a half, I think, and I got emails from all over the world. All over. I mean, you wouldn't believe the emails.
What was they saying?
Just liking what I said. I had people call the office crying.
How'd they get your email address? Or
They looked it up. They
found
just searched me. Yeah. And then I've been on. I can't remember how many times I've been on. The next time I went to
maybe
New York.
3 times.
I went to New York. Oh, that's when the NFL deal.
Yeah, I remember that one specifically.
What happened there is I had decided I was going to keep a lower profile on the news. You know, I didn't want to be. I was getting too much press, and I was going to keep a low profile. But I had written a letter. That NFL thing came out, and I didn't like it, and I just wrote a letter to our advertising company. I said, I don't want to do any advertising on Monday nights on the NFL. Just take our ads off. I mean, I'm pulling like a $200 ad off of Fort Wayne, Indiana, Monday night.
Yeah. But it's still an ad.
It's still an ad,
Yeah.
but the way this thing came out is Allan Jones is bringing the NFL to his knees. Well, I'm thinking, no, I took a $200 ad off Fort Wayne.
You didn't correct them at the time.
No, but what happened is I knew a couple of NFL owners. I'd met Jerry Johnson. Of course, I know Jimmy Haslam. And
The former guy.
well, yeah, you're pretty confused. If
Yeah,
you're
I'm pretty confused,
The NFL and the
I'm confused on
SEC.
football.
So, anyway, I decided I had all these TV cameras. Channel CBS called, NBC called, ABC called, Fox called, and I chose Fox. So I flew to New York because I had to really explain that I didn't do what they think I did. I'm not bringing anybody to their knees. I'm a little guy. I just took an ad off. I tried. I mean, I'm not. It's not like I'm the Mercedes Stadium in Atlanta that I'm going to take my name off of something. It's not that big of a deal. But anyway, I know I've been on there. You know what they asked me about? They asked me about my socks like you did. And I started talking about the Catman. And next thing you know, Catman gets calls all over the world.
Does he have email?
Yeah, I think he does.
What does he have, like cats? Like
He has a little house in Key West. He's at Mowry Square. Have you ever been to Key West?
No, but we'll get him to come here.
Oh, I don't think. Dominique's his name. He's a suave Frenchman. And
Keep him away from my wife.
he's trained. He trains cats to do remarkable things.
How do you train cats?
I don't know, but he trains them. And we went to his house, and his house was immaculate, And I had to go to his house because he didn't keep all of his socks with him.
Wonder how he arrived there.
I don't know how he got in there. There's a bunch of weirdos down there at Key West. At Sunset, Mowry.
There's short one right now.
Yeah. Here I am wearing weirdo socks, right? That's the story of the Catman socks.
Well, what do you think is the future for checking the cash?
Oh, the checking the cash is struggling. They've changed so many rules and regulations. It just makes it almost impossible to comply.
Who are they?
Well, the Consumer Protection Agency. Now, Trump stopped them from making any new ones, but Obama made so many changes that it's very hard to comply. We have to have meetings. Like if somebody calls and complains, like I got there at 5 minutes to 6 and you were closed and your sign said 6 o'clock. That's a complaint that the board of directors has to meet and discuss. And then we have to send in a report to the Consumer Protection Agency.
If you're in a business today that you don't have to be compliant to the government, you need to be thankful, don't you?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, you have the financial market is so complicated.
If you were
We have 2 states that even what's it called? The Department of Financial Institutions oversees us is not sure what compliance is. They're not sure how we're supposed to comply with some of this stuff. They're confused too.
But they may sue you for it later.
Well, lawyers sue you. And if they lose, they'll sue for whatever the winning side said.
Now, if you're a 22-year-old guy today, and you've got your mind of able to boil stuff down to its least common, simplest, bare bones, minimum interpretation, what would you do today?
Well, here's the way industries work. The credit bureau, the collection agency industry. The first thing we had is they passed the Tennessee Collection Service Act. And so then we have to start getting a license. And then the Tennessee Collection Service Act in 1978, the Federal Fair Debt Collection Practices Act passed. And then we started having different courts having different decisions. And when I sold the credit bureau in 1998, we had so many disclosures on the first. If we wrote you a letter, if you owed $100 to the hospital for emergency room visit, we wrote you a letter. We had to wait to the second letter to write you, tell you what we're writing about. Our first letter is all of our disclosures that you won't read. I mean, it's just so many disclosures. We had to have on the back of the envelope, we had to have, this agency is licensed by the Tennessee Collection Service Board. Here's our name and phone number. If we're doing anything wrong, you can call and tell.
But if you're voting in Pennsylvania, you don't have to have any of that.
Right. If we call you on the phone, we have to say this is an attempt to collect a debt. Any information gained will be so used. You don't have to do that with your tenants when you call. Well, we have to. We have to, if we checking the cash.
If you call George McCoy's office, they say that on the answering machine.
Yes. This attempt to collect a debt, any information gained will be so used.
Yeah.
Now, can I speak to so-and-so? He's not here.
Thank you.
And they say, who's calling? We can't tell you. I can't leave a message
So
anymore.
you can't leave a message?
We also can't go to your house. You know, if we can't find you, we used to go to the house. And here's the problem, is we would go to people's houses and sit down and talk to them, and we'd work out something with them. And they'd come in and get caught up, be a good customer. Like title lending, we do title lending. The Consumer Protection Agency, if they got behind, we'd go to the house and talk to them. So look, we're either going to have the car or the money or something, and we're going to have to take the car back. Mm-hmm. And 9 times out of 10, we'd work out something with them. Today, the Tennessee Consumer Protection Agency says we cannot threaten repossession. We just have to repossess it. So now we just pull up with a wrecker and take your car and surprise you. And that's the way they require us to do it.
So this policy that's supposed to help them
hurts
them.
Yes. Everything aims for me and hits them. See, and that's what's amazing. It's just so simple. Why would you? We don't want, the last thing we want is a car back. What are you going to do with a car? You want a car out in Colorado?
Yeah.
What are you going to do with it?
Well, it's like when they went up on the city property tax or the county property taxes. I guess that was aimed at me, and I just sent a letter to all the tenants and said, due to the property taxes, we're going up. I went up $5. It covered all of them.
We did too. We calculated exactly what it was.
I mean, I actually made $100 a month on it or something.
Well, any new person starting out, I've seen 2 industries. I've seen the checking the cash start to the very simplest form, the easiest to get in, the easiest for somebody to get in the business for, to become the most complicated. I've seen the credit bureau go from a very simple operation to such a complicated compliance situation where you're trying to make phone calls and the Consumer Protection Agency and all the stuff you have to deal with today. If you're in the business, you need to grow that business as long as you can, and once the regulation starts coming in, you need to sell it and just get out of it, because that's the height of the industry. As soon as regulation comes in, see, what you're going to see is you're going to see the regulation of Facebook and all these guys. They're going to start controlling them, but it's going to get out of hand. The first few steps is going to be beneficiary, but next it's going to be unbeneficiary, and they're going to screw the internet up. Right now, the internet's doing well because there's very little government control of it. And once the government steps in.
So what you're saying is, Max Everhart, a good friend of mine years ago, he said, Dee, the secret to success is find a need and fill it. So what you're saying is the same thing. Find a need, but you're changing it by saying, find a new need, new industry.
Well, in checking the cash, what had happened?
See, that was a first.
Is you could not get $200.
See, that was basically a first.
Nobody could get $200. You could not borrow $200. Here's a good example. In California, we can loan up to $300 to you on a payday loan. After that, if we take you to a title loan, we can only loan you $2,500 or greater. So what the donut hole is between, if you need somewhere between $300 and $2,500, there's no loan for you.
The mafia.
Yeah. So now they don't want us to get you too far in debt, but if you come in and need $1,000 on your car, sir, we can't, but we can give you $2,500 on your car. And your car, you want to give you $5,000 on your car, but we can't give you $1,000 on your car. And it makes it harder to pay back. It's just government gone awry.
So, it's the new industries. You know, it's
Define a new
interesting.
industry.
You got the first sprinkler system or the second, the first touch-tone phone,
First private phone system.
first
in Cleveland.
private phone
I put
system,
the first
first
private,
fax machine,
first private phone system in a house on Centenary
Yeah.
Avenue.
and the first
Cell phone.
Cell phone, which now people know the guy that was sitting on his car
On my tiptoes.
On his tiptoes, they know now why.
Yeah.
And
I got the first Segway.
first Segway.
The Segway, to get
First,
a Segway,
no, first you was the first one born.
first baby born in the hospital.
Baby born in the hospital. And the first checking the cash.
Yeah, I created the industry.
You created the industry.
Created the industry, checking the cash.
So if you were 22, what industry would you create?
I
Or
don't
you
know.
don't know.
You don't
don't
know.
know.
You just don't know. You just got to see what's coming
Is it
up.
out there though?
It's there. I mean, today, first of all, you got to have the want to.
But
And
everybody would say all the songs have been written.
No. There's so much going on in the app field and Netflix and all these stuff. There's so much going on there. I just don't have the want to anymore. I'm gonna be 68 December 31st. You know, I just don't have the want to. I'm comfortable. I just don't want to fool with it. You know, it's one of the reasons Hardwick, I really didn't have the want to. I put a lot of money into it, but I let other people do it instead of me doing it. It really takes me to do all that to make it successful.
My good friend Glenn Ramsey told me, he said, Dee, he said you have to have the desire. He called it desire because he talks with a little bit of an accent. But that's what you're saying. You have to have the desire.
Yeah.
You had no longer the
The want
desire
to.
for, all you had the desire to do is wear the jacket.
I just didn't have the desire to, like I used to. See, used to get to my office every morning before 7 a.m. and I would stay till 6 o'clock every night. And I worked every Saturday. Even though we closed at 12:30, I would stay till 4 o'clock.
How long did you do that?
For 30 years, probably.
So for 30 years, you worked on Saturdays
Oh, yeah.
till 4:30.
Mhm.
What did you do from 1? See, on my job, everybody's gone by 1. But I'm still here till 5.
Well, you're doing the same thing I was doing. I would be here doing, I'd be figuring out things and in my office by myself. I remember I was single, and it was Valentine's Day, and I was dating this girl named Sandy Hoff, and I had to take her out on Valentine's Day.
Had you been married before or after?
This is after I've been
This
married.
is
And
during-
I have a single daughter. I'm raising on my own, so I'm really working hard. I'd been at my office for 40 hours straight. I hadn't been to bed. I've been up, stayed up all night, just kept going. And now I have to go take her to dinner, and we go to the Walden Club. And I fell asleep at the Walden Club while they're flaming food tableside. She was really nice. We got her a meal to go. And Walden Club, they're not used to getting anybody a meal to go.
What did you get to go?
I couldn't stay awake. I was wore out. You know.
Where'd you take it?
I took it to her house, and she lived above the garage, and she went and slept with her parents, and I slept in her room because I was too sleepy to drive home. But she
In Cleveland?
No, in Chattanooga.
Oh.
She lived in Chattanooga.
If she's listening now, she's...
Yeah, she's a great girl. She's married, and Sandy was real funny, very witty, and we were really kind of good friends. But I mean, you'd think she would get mad at me for that, but she wasn't. She understood. But I worked incredibly hard. But you have to have that want to. Dee, I had a system in my house, in the corner. I had 4 big spotlights. These not floodlights, but spotlights. You know, you have spotlights and floodlights. These are spotlights. And I had a timer set. And at 4:30 in the morning, that timer came on, and it made a wham because it took so much power, and the lights came on and woke me up.
Now, why would you do that?
Because I would turn the alarm clock off. This way I had to get up and go turn those lights off.
But why 4:30?
Because I wanted to go to work.
Why?
I just needed to get there.
What was the reason?
I wanted to, I wanted to beat Chilton Corporation. I wanted to beat the Crateville Chattanooga. I wanted to win. I had a drive.
To be rich or to win?
I think rich comes along with it. I wanted to win. Because I never looked at money. I wouldn't look at P&Ls, or I wouldn't look, that wouldn't be something I looked at a lot. I would look at the big picture. I remember when Bill Torrance, they were meeting, I'd hired this sales lady from my competitor. They had brought a competitor in trying to get rid of the credit bureau there at the hospital, and they'd come up with some type of scheme. And I'd hired this lady, and I found out what they said. And when they came up with this scheme, Bill Torrance told them, said, "You do that, and that young man will nail your ass to the wall. He will literally nail your hide to the wall if you do that. You have no idea what you're dealing with." Well, I thought that was an honor for him to say that. He's saying that if you don't do everything right, that guy will beat you. And I was just like 24 years old. But that was driving me. I had this huge drive. I don't have the drive now. Probably in 98, when I moved to Creek Ridge, I was starting to slow down. See, my whole plan was I was going to retire when I got 50. And when I got 50, Cash America came to town. They're publicly traded, and they took me down to. We met at the Cosmos law or accounting firm. We met in their boardroom, and they wanted to buy the company. They offered me $228 million for it, and I was 50 years old. And I always said I would retire when I got 50. And I was just sitting there, and I started listening to them. I said, "Well, I won't have a flight department anymore. I won't need that. Who's going to work on my computers? Who am I going to eat lunch with?" And I just suddenly decided I wasn't going to sell. And the chairman of Cash America, he pounds his fist. He said, "This is more money than you can spend the rest of your life." I said, "It's not even close." You have no idea. I was 50 years old, and I got worried about what I would do. Look at that would be if I'd done that, that'd been 17 years ago. Of course, I could be broke then. Toby went broke. He sold out and went broke.
Yeah, but you didn't know.
And $128 million, see, I might have thought I was a genius. What happens is people think they're a genius and they're investment genius, and they lose the money. When they make it in one industry, something then they think.
Mike Tyson said it right. He said everybody's got a plan till they get hit in the nose.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, that's the truth, isn't it?
Yeah, that is true.
Well, and it's been really interesting. You got anything else we need to cover?
Well, I can't believe it's been 2 hours. I didn't think I'd make it.
It's been 2 hours, Glenn? God.
Well, good night from the Jones family and the Burris family. And if you've watched to this point, you've got a lot of something missing in your life. See ya. All right.
Well, that was good, wasn't it? That'll be a big hit, wasn't it?